Welcome back, everybody, to Too Much Popcorn, the movie review podcast where Jimmy and I, we watch a movie and then we sit down, we talk about the things we liked about the movie, the things we didn't like, the highs and the lows, and ultimately we come to the decision on whether we would recommend this movie to somebody or not. And this week we watched the hit 2023 movie Renfield. That's right, we watched Renfield, the movie with Nicholas Hoult and Nicholas National Treasure Cage. And, Ben Schwartz was in this. You gotta love to see that. And then there was Awkwafina too, I guess.
A couple other people in there, yeah.
Yeah.
That's, I just realized it was double Nick. We got like double Nick out.
Yeah, because I kept saying, Nick's fun in this movie when we were watching it. And then I realized I had to do a little bit more specifying.
Yes, because you can say Nick, and then sometimes it's spelled with a C, sometimes it's spelled with CK, you know.
Yeah, and we all know Nicolas Cage loves going by, Nicky C, but, maybe we'll refer to him that way in this episode.
Or what mob family is he actually a part of that he doesn't use the last name?
Oh, isn't he a Coppola?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't he is a Nicholas Ford Coppola?
Yeah. Yeah, man. And this movie, this is another just Coppola. It's up there with the Great Train Robbery. I think that was one of the Francis Ford Coppola's movies.
Francis Ford Coppola did Dracula. It did a Dracula movie. Fully a Dracula movie.
Yeah. Was that the Bela Lugosi or was that one of the Christopher Lee?
No. Even later than that, it's a man you would not expect to play Dracula.
Gary Oldman.
As Dracula. There you go. It's a Gary Oldman.
Oh, wow. I thought Bram Stoker directed that.
Ghost directed.
Why? Because why is it called Bram Stoker's Dracula if Bram Stoker's not the one who's directing it?
I don't know. Is Bram Stoker's Dracula? Did another person write a Dracula and they're like, this is my Dracula? And Bram Stoker's like, this is Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Yeah. I'm suing you guys. This is the real truth of Dracula.
Can we assume for Renfield, though, that we're speaking of Bram Stoker's Dracula and not that other guy?
I think we're speaking
the
of
other
like
Dracula.
I think we're speaking of a weird like amalgamation of what Dracula has become, and it's kind of this combination of Bram Stoker's Dracula. Like they did a fun little, go back and show,
I
the things.
Loved that.
Yeah, and like they showed the ship, which you gotta love when they show the ship.
Gotta love the Demeter.
Yeah, but they also
we should watch that.
But then they also like have him be stylized after like the Bela Lugosi, very good Dracula.
Christopher Lee too, in a way. I think he drew from a couple sources there.
Yeah. And then that also begs the question, when they had the Bela Lugosi Dracula, why did they then go, hey, Christopher Lee, do you also want to be Dracula and be in like 6 of these bad boys?
Well, that was Hammer, right? So it was like different companies couldn't get the Lugosi Dracula. They're like, Christopher, you look very... We are also all Draculas here at Hammer Horror. You look kind of like us. Would you like to act as Dracula, our Dark Lord?
Yeah, I guess it is the difference between like Sony and Marvel. Like Sony presents Dracula.
Sony's Dracula versus, Universal's Dracula. Yeah, it's all sort of, it goes back to how the movies have been running the whole time, where you'll get 6 Frankenstein movies within a 10-year span, and you just sort of question your reality. Dracula 2000 AD exists out there, right? Like,
hey, there is Dracula 3000.
Yeah, so I think you are right. It is sort of an amalgam, but it's definitely fully Bram Stoker's in terms of you have to be invited in, you have to drink of the blood, the sunlight kills you, or at least maims you in a horrible way and burns your flesh and all this sort of stuff. And I think there was a funny line that Nick Cage, he said it was something about like, like it doesn't have to be women. And, and it goes back to Bram Stoker's Dracula fully just being like, I like to kill and eat women. And it's like, all right. Is it a sex thing? And it's like, oh, I'll never tell. I'm Dracula. And you're like, well, yeah, I guess you did kill all the guys on the boat. So could have been men and women on the boat. It's not really his place to say. But it goes to say that I really, really like Nick Cage as a goofy Dracula. I think it is peak what Nick Cage should be doing. And there was that other movie where he's like, I'm a vampire. So it's like he's been wanting to do this for a long time. And it's been a thing where I don't know if this was the Dracula that I wanted him to play, but it's close enough that I will take him in this role and see what he does with it and sort of have a fun time with his character.
Yeah. I saw the trailer to this movie. I think Ben Schwartz originally posted it somewhere, and I was like, oh, I love Ben Schwartz and stuff. So this might be good. And then I saw it was starring Nick Holt, and I was like, hey, I love him and stuff. He's in that show on Hulu, The Great. I love that. That's good. He's funny in there. And then, then they do the reveal, and you got Nick Cage as Dracula, and you're like, well, I like Nick Cage in National Treasure. So, maybe this will be good. And it looked good. And then, we get another into the Marvel verse and into the Dracula verse. And then you watch this movie and you're like, oh, okay.
Well, Renfield is fully in the book, I think. Like, not as a main character, but it's like there is a character named Renfield that is like, I'm the guy that helped Dracula get to the mainland. And you're like, Renfield, why'd you do that? And they're like, this is the movie explaining why, kind of. But also, the movie is not titled Nick Cage Dracula Fun Times. It's titled Renfield. And then in very small legalese font under Renfield, it's like, what to do when you live under Dracula's rule for so long and you get tired. And that's the movie.
Yeah. As always, folks, we do zero preparation in, part for the show. So a lot of this is just us speculating wildly. And I'm going to speculate wildly that some writer who was involved with this movie was in therapy for, some codependent relationship. And while they were in there, someone was like, hey, we're kind of like somebody working under Dracula. And the guy was like, oh, that could be a movie. And also, why is that guy talking in a Transylvanian accent?
Is it nighttime? I can only work nights.
Yeah. But yeah, a big draw to this movie was like, oh, it's so funny that, Nick Holt is in therapy because he's been working under Dracula for so long and he's developed this codependent relationship. That is funny for 10 minutes, but then they draw it out for I would say more than half the movie. It goes on a little bit too long because they also yes, Nick Holt works for Dracula. We get that. But that doesn't so much mean that he is a codependent person. That just means that he is somebody's thrall. And I don't think they really developed that relationship between the two of them well enough. I mean, they have plenty of times where Dracula's yelling at Nick Holt and stuff, but it didn't really seem like I should be believing that Nick Holt was really codependent. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like we were dropped into him being 30 days into having gone to these sessions. And so it's he's already developed this sort of relationship with these people and he's listened to their problems and he's what I thought was weird was he's here to sort of learn about bad people who need to be taken out of people's lives so that he can feed those bad people to Dracula. And so my thought was oh, he's been doing this for a while and there's been people who have therefore left the group because their aggressor or codependent person has been taken out of their life and they therefore do not need this therapy group. But the issue with that then is like fully met in the movie is the cops go to these women who have had their significant others taken out because they were killed by Nick Holt and fed to Dracula, and they're all like, we're great, this is fantastic, we don't go to the group anymore, but also there were missing people, and so this is all sort of tied back to us. And so I think the only sort of writer's convenience that I'm seeing there is that you could technically do that. That you could have been doing that forever, and the cops are so corrupt in this movie that there would never have been a reason to check up on any of these missing reports anyways, because you're just like, well, I get paid to just not do any police work because I'm a cop and the mob pays me. So it's like you have to subvert your sort of, I mean, you just have to like live in a different reality in this movie where
completely.
You're like, the world around you is so corrupt and full of people that will just like kill or do mountains of cocaine, but like they won't sell it. Like this city should just be cocaine world based on how much fucking cocaine you see in the movie. And you're like, are you exporting the cocaine? Where's the cocaine going? Because you have a lot of it. And that's not how you make a lot of money if you're like dealing drugs. You don't just have it. You need to like put it, like it needs to go be sold somewhere to get the money. So there's like no reality that I'm understanding. They don't pay the cops in fucking cocaine. There's just, I can't, they're in the Crackdown universe. If no one's played Crackdown, it's a fucked up world where the gangs rule everything except the police force. But in this movie, the police force is also owned by the gangs. So there's just no good.
Yeah, you pegged it when we watched the movie. This is the Crackdown universe, and this movie is also just like writer's convenience paradise, where like something happens, and it just so conveniently happens at the right time to make the movie continue to flow. And then not only that, like something will happen, and your thought isn't even like, oh, why did that happen? Your thought is just like, oh, it's just a writer's convenience. Of course it would happen that way. I'm going to accept that. And like, it starts off by like showing, ooh, the Lobos, they run the town, and, they're a scary gang. And then over time, like you start to see like, oh, they got influence in the police. But then like, they are just 100% controlling the police. And so you're like, all right, well, why don't they be the police? Like, and then like, they get mad at Renfield, who's played by Nick Holt, and they go to try and hunt him down. And they're like, oh, we need the police's help with this. And then Sting's there and he's like, yo. And then he's not, but that's different. But, and then, they're just like teamed up with, it's the Lobos and the police.
You don't have to put on.
That was a wonderful Miss Piggy singing Roxanne.
Dress tonight, Roxanne.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just, there's too much of the writer's convenience.
I want Sting in this movie now. I think he should have shown up.
Dude, I want Sting in more movies. What were we watching the other day? Oh, we watched, this is off topic, but we watched that movie last week that we didn't
Flesh
do
Plus Blood?
Yeah, that had Rutger Hauer, who looked 100% like Sting.
I know. They could have done like a cool like mirror thing where Sting looks in the mirror, or like Rutger Hauer looks in the mirror and then Sting grabs into the mirror. Either way, we're talking about this movie. The funny thing about the gang being called like Los Lobos, or correct me if I'm wrong, this is wolf in Spanish, not like Italian or like other thing. And they went to like a restaurant a couple times that was like El Moleto or something, like it was another Spanish word.
Yeah.
And so the funniest weird detail about this movie to me is that Ben Schwartz just does not look like he belongs to like a Spanish crime family. So his whole character vibe is like Ben Schwartz, the man Ben Schwartz, is in this crime family pretending to be the son of this like crime matron who actually, belongs in this gang or somewhere, and she adopted Ben Schwartz long ago. And he got a lot of tattoos and became this hard gang member who also has never killed anyone. And so there's like so many logical disconnects that just kept cracking. Like it was like one chain in the movie, and you kept unlinking more and more chains throughout it. And you're like, okay, Renfield serves Dracula undyingly, he'll do it unquestioningly, but suddenly not anymore. He decides that he doesn't want to anymore because we're writers conveniencing that he maybe has been going to this group long enough where he's gotten his, hubris, whatever. But basically it's like in the movie, you see the point where he goes, I can't do this anymore. I'm going back to the group and I'm going to turn my life around. And apparently I've never shared anything to this group before because Mark, the group leader, is very excited and cuts off Carol multiple times to hear about Renfield's woes. And funny bit, maybe the one time, and then Carol's like, do I never get to share or whatever? I get it. It just ended up being a lot of dialogue, so much dialogue of writers' conveniences that the dialogue that was supposedly the rest of the plot or even jokes was Aquafina pointing at someone and swearing at them. Renfield sort of gingerly killing someone and being like, oh, did I do that? and Dracula, Nick Cage just being like, I have maybe not enough lines in this, but when I say Dracula, then you like that I say that, and that's sort of my whole character as I say Dracula. It's so the rest of the dialogue being so boring felt like the writers' conveniences were up in the stratosphere of how important they were supposed to be, in that they're so important because we didn't write the rest of the movie.
And I felt like, okay, so a perfect example of a movie that's like both very well written and like also not written at the same time and just let people like improv the whole movie was both 21 and 22 Jump Street. And I got that feeling from this movie for like just a little bit at the beginning. And I was like, okay, maybe they're going to do it where they have like just enough of a script that they'll let people improv. And especially with like Ben Schwartz being here, like he's a little prince of improv. Like he's great at it.
Crown Prince.
Yes. And like, I was like, okay, I'm getting 21, 22 Jump Street vibes. I'm feeling this. And then like people just start talking and you're like, all right, this isn't improv and none of these lines are funny. And especially, Aquafina pointing at Mark and Kyle and being like, fuck you, Kyle. It's just like, that's not a joke. That's not a joke. What are we doing here? And Nick Holt too, a very funny guy. I've seen him be funny and stuff. And again, just like every time
he's very good in The Menu. If you haven't seen that one, he's great in that one.
And again, I point to him in The Great. Like anytime he delivers a line in there, I'm like, it's nailed, and I love it.
Yeah, but I think he's a very good actor. That if you point him at what he's supposed to be acting at, you can get a very good performance at him, or you just let him loose in this movie.
Well, I would like to believe that he just had some very bad direction in this movie, and they didn't know how to harness his power of Dracula, well enough. Because, it was just like
bugs.
Every time he delivered a line, it was just like, ooh, I want to like it, but I just can't.
I think it was believable as this sort of like vampire thrall trying to escape this thing, but because it's a comedy, it ends up being that it's making fun of the actual therapy of these sort of types of groups. And I think that ends up being a problem for me because it's like, I think this group would be very helpful for the people who are in this group. And Renfield comes into this group and gets these people murdered. And I think that's a problem because these people did not deserve to be murdered. And he acknowledges that. And he likes that he's able to help them in a different way at the end by bringing them back to life. Like, but it's sort of like the audience, myself, I'm watching the movie and I can't care about these people because I know that they're in a monster smash beat 'em up movie, horror / comedy, that they are possible fodder for Nick Cage's Dracula anytime. And I always try to avoid trailers, but I know I saw the trailer for this one. And so I see him walk into this room full of innocents and I go, oh, they're going to be blood soup by the end of whatever Nick Cage has to do with them. And so as soon as they're introduced in the movie, I say these people are pigs to the slaughter for whatever this movie has to do. And so it extends to beyond this group of innocents. Everyone is at the beck and call of the teeth of Dracula, you know, like the movie so effortlessly puts anytime Nick Cage is on screen killing someone, it's like slashes an entire body in half, rips a head off, rips arms off. Like, you know, he is this unstoppable force. So why even, it feels like whenever there is a human element introduced, it is so diminished by the awesome power that is this Dracula ultra hero. You know, like he even is killing vampire hunters and stuff like that. Like people who are training to kill him, and suddenly you're just like giving him food on screen that we have to like watch talk, and suddenly they're important to us.
I don't know why, but somehow leading up to that, I did not piece together that Dracula was going to rip that entire room of people apart. And it was just one of those moments where I was like, did this really need to happen? And did it need to happen so graphically? Like, you know, the rest of the violence in the movie is happening. And I'm just like, all right, you know, guy gets his hands chopped off by Platter. Okay. Guy gets his head punched off by Nick Holt. Okay. But then, you know, Dracula rips the whole room apart. And I'm just like, I didn't really need that from this movie. And like, you know, Dracula talks about wanting to eat a whole bus of cheerleaders and, you know, eat a whole bunch of nuns. And like, I think if he had ripped those people apart, I would have been like, okay, yeah, that's just Dracula stuff. But like him killing this whole group of people, I was just like, okay, they weren't really necessary to kill. And I don't feel like that was the, like, you know, Nick Holt has already made the decision to leave Dracula. And so then Dracula kills everybody and he's like, okay, yeah, no, now my decision's made even more. And I'm like, no, it's still the same level of made. This was just a purposeless killing.
You know, I think it even goes beyond it's not subtle writing in terms of this is the moment where Dracula becomes petty and goes, I have this ultimate power. You are my thrall. You are nothing to me. But also, because of the character that I am in this movie, Dracula, I am petty. I don't like that you found a support group that has turned you against me. And beyond my possibly infinite immortality, I am choosing to be petty in this moment to kill all of these people who you thought you were going to be able to help, or were at least unlocking that part in you, you know. So it's sort of like, it's the moment where I think you're supposed to be like, Dracula's such a petty bitch. Why would he do this? I can't believe he, like, it feels like it's the moment where it's like humanizing Dracula, and, you know, like it's losing his luster of ultimate godhood, you know, like Dark Prince level of, you know, it's like, oh, he's just a petty bitch. So I think that didn't work for me, because now I do think it's like, yes, he is taking this personally, but it was so effortless and like nothing to him. And he just goes, like, he literally just goes off after doing it, where I go, so it literally meant nothing to him. So it did mean nothing to him. He just did it. He was a petty bitch and it meant nothing to him. I'm so confused.
Yeah. And his whole thing is like, I want to kill to, you know, drink the blood of innocence so I can get my power back. But then he like doesn't even drink anybody's blood there, who are all
He
technically
gets like
innocent.
a little bit.
Yeah, he gets a little bit, and he's like, "Oh, it's enough," but I still have some scars, and it's like, "Oh, you should have drank some more, Dracula." I don't know. I don't think that worked for me. I don't think even, talking more about character motivation, I don't even think Nick Holt's character motivation really mattered to me too, because like his whole thing's that he wants to be free of Dracula, but I just didn't really care. I didn't care if he was working for Dracula or not. I mean, he's been working for him for who knows how long now, and now he's decided to leave. And if he does decide to leave, then what? Like, what was his life gonna be like afterwards?
You know what I fucking figured out? Dracula doesn't say anything funny.
Yeah, no, he didn't.
So what is missing from the scene where he eviscerates these innocent people, he like goes down to bite the neck and suck the blood of one that he just like, and Renfield's just sitting there because he's being Renfield. Dracula goes down, sucks on the blood, and then he goes, "Oh, this blood is too sad. Very innocent, but too sad." Like Nick Cage is very capable of quippy one-liners, shit like that. But Dracula was the straight man in this movie?
Yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah, they tried to like have him have this overarching like, ooh, he is mysterious and powerful. He is what Dracula is supposed to be. But you needed more than that. And especially if you have Nick Cage, you need more than that. Like, you're missing a great aspect to who Nick Cage is. And I felt that personally. Like, there's that scene where he shows up at Nick Holt's little studio apartment and he's yelling at Nick Holt. And I was like, I'm not feeling the drama here. One, because...
But he was funny in that scene.
I didn't feel that.
He was a little... They were trying to make him funny, but he wasn't funny. He was drinking from a martini glass filled with eyeglasses.
Which...
They kept cutting back. They kept cutting back to him, and he was sort of doing like a, are you talking to me like I am, So it's like that scene was trying to make him funny, but none of the rest of the movie made it so that made any sense.
Yeah.
To have him be like, eyeballs in my martini glass.
Yeah, and he did this like, Nick Holt like started talking, and he was like, oh, like he was mocking, Renfield at that moment. And I was like, oh, we're now getting Nick Cage popping through Dracula here.
Yeah.
Not Dracula himself.
But like, that's what we wanted. You put Nick Cage in the movie.
Yeah. But it wasn't used until that one moment. And at that one moment, it felt so out of character because it hadn't been done anywhere else at that time. Yeah. And so
I think we finally figured it out.
Yeah. It was just that Dracula wasn't funny.
Yes. And you're okay. The thing with naming the movie Renfield is that you're putting Dracula backseat, giving him that ability to be funny.
Yeah. Well, and then it's weird too, because Dracula's driving in the back seat, and he's very much driving this movie because he's the one who's like, Renfield, I need this. Okay, now my motivation is this. Now the movie's going here because
do this for me.
Yes. We are doing this next because of the thing that I have done to lead us here. And then you're like, okay, Dracula's leading this, but Renfield's the main character, and his only motivation is to get free of Dracula, and he does so little to do that. His only step to get away from Dracula is to get a 1-bedroom studio apartment, when in reality, he should have been like, I'm just going to fucking kill Dracula.
Do you know how I could afford a 1-bedroom studio apartment?
Ads?
Ads, baby. Let's take a little ad break.
How's that new bedroom? 1-bedroom studio apartment.
It's right next to my closet, my bathroom, and my kitchen.
Is Nick Cage there?
I can touch all of the things. Hey, Nick Cage is here.
It comes with a Nick Cage. Hey, that's pretty good.
Do you think he is both bats and smoke more in this movie than a physical Nick Cage?
I don't know. I mean, I would say he's either Okay, I would add in also with prosthetics on his face because they did a good job of junking him up.
Yes, that was also almost funny Nick Cage when he
Yeah.
was like, "I'm a creepy little guy."
They did
Yeah.
three things well in this movie, which was like the prosthetics, the locations, and like showing the powers of being Dracula.
Oh, the locations were sick.
Dude,
If the lighting was a little better in most of them, I think they'd be great. But there were so many cool boss rooms that they set up in this one. The chair with the blood packs behind it was insane.
yeah, I know I said it when we were watching it, but I'm going to say it so it's recorded here. But this movie did a better job of putting Hitman 47, level places on
Levels.
screen. Yeah, levels on screen than the fucking Hitman movies did. So,
Facts.
Yeah.
There literally were like cooler things with like weapon walls straight out of John Wick happening in this movie. And it was to the effect of delight, right? As a viewer, you get to see these very cool sets. And I think they put a lot of effort and work into them and possibly were underutilized to some degree. But yeah, it was a Hitman set. It was a Hitman level that you put Dracula in, and I would play that game as well.
yeah. Oh, dude, instead of you being Hitman, you're Dracula.
You're just describing Splinter Cell, but
Yeah.
Dracula.
Love it. I play it. But yeah, and then they did a good job of like, oh, Dracula gets burned by sunlight and now he's all gross and like burnt up. And like
It's a good setup.
Yeah. It looked really cool. And the way that they did the prosthetics on Nick Cage looked really cool. And
Fuck, dude. Look, this is another moment where I can't believe now is the time where I'm thinking Dracula should have been funny the whole movie. And I didn't think that thought the entire movie. And now that the movie's over, I'm finally like, Dracula should have been funny the whole movie because he was burnt to a crisp. And Renfield's like, "Are you doing okay, master?" And he says something like, "Not really." But like, there could have been something funnier there. Like, "Dude, what do you think?" Like he gets up and does like a little like, "What do you think I'm doing? You think I'm doing good here?" You know?
I'm a few bats short of a bat cage. Yeah.
Just underutilized. I know Nick Cage can be really funny. I know I haven't seen the that previous one he was in with Pedro Pascal, the Unbearable Weight of the Talent one.
Oh yeah.
Where he like plays himself. I bet he's hilarious in that. So it's like I know he's very funny. I think the director of this movie is related in some way to like Lego movies, maybe even like 21 Jump Streets, like those in some way. I think this guy has some relation to those, and those are good edited, good, like the things that I think this director is related to. I'm thinking back, I'm like, you got good jokes in those. You got good editing to those jokes to make them punchier and funnier and all this sort of stuff. Like the Lego movie has some of those amazing, like some of the best cutaways of jokes in the entire just like world of cinema. And you come here and you go, I don't know if I laughed at anything. I think I only laughed sometimes when Ben Schwartz was like doing a goofy thing or like falling on his butt. But I don't know if this movie, which when we looked at it, it said comedy first and then horror. Right? So if it's comedy first, if it's not a horror comedy, but instead a comedy horror, what are we doing here?
Yeah, I think I laughed a couple times at the very beginning. I could not tell you for the life of me what those jokes were that I laughed at. So that should tell you something.
It was a pity laugh.
Yeah. And I think one of the things I started enjoying at the very beginning quickly like lost its splendor, and that was the action in this movie. Where like they start doing some like pretty, well thought out stunts and stunts that ended up in like bloody, gory messes. And like the first couple times you see it, you're like, oh, okay, yeah. And especially when Dracula's doing those things to like the vampire hunters, you're like, okay, that's cool. And like I get that because it's Dracula and he's super powerful and he has the ability to like rip a person's arms off.
Yeah.
And like I could go and, tolerate a movie where like there's more of that, where it's Dracula ripping people's arms off. But then like there's just so much of it in the movie. And I'm not saying that like movies should shy away from, violence in them, but like it's got to serve a purpose. And I know I pointed it out that it reminded me of that, Jamie Foxx Vampire Hunter movie where they did a whole bunch of flips and cool things and guns and shooting things and people exploding. And it was like, it has to serve a purpose. It serves a purpose in John Wick because like it looks super cool and it's all about martial arts and, it's a martial art movie.
Right.
This just was like, hey, we're a comedy action horror movie and we got all these things, so we got to check each of the boxes. We got jokes because Awkwafina yelled at that man. We got horror because we got Dracula here, and now we got action because the man just got his arms ripped off. So that's it. That's a movie. And everybody's like, I guess.
Do you think this movie lost a bit of its soul when it gave Renfield bug-based superpowers?
I kind of liked that because it limited, if you're going to give a character a whole bunch of power, you should do something in some way to limit it so they can't just run wild the whole movie. And so I liked that they were like,
but guess who fucking runs wild the whole movie?
Yeah, fucking Dracula. But then also like they don't explain like, okay, so if he eats more bugs, do his powers last longer? Are they more powerful?
Who could say?
Yeah, and also like he has access to all these powers, but he does nothing to go up and fight Dracula until the very end.
Yeah, here's what I'm saying is a truly codependent Renfield is one with no superpowers. He has to use his undeniably weaker human strength to kill people and bring them to Dracula. And he is a weak, servile man. And he does not have these superhuman powers. He is immortal because of Dracula's undying curse placed upon him. B, to keep this immortality, and in some way you feel stronger because you can't die. You serve Dracula and do what he says, which is usually kill people or bring him fresh bodies to feed on. So I think there is an element here where you are losing what I believe a true Renfield servant is. And, I'm not like a fucking Dracula historian or some shit. I don't know if this was how Renfield was in the book. I can't really remember. He's like very much like a named character that is like, I put his dirt in the houses and that's it. I leave away and I don't have infinite power, but I have some, I get something out of the deal. Maybe it's just money. I don't know. So in this movie, I think there is a cheapening of Dracula's power because by the end of it, everyone has it. Everyone gets the glowing eyes. Everyone jumps from the balconies, except that it doesn't feel like everyone has unlimited power because Awkwafina is not eviscerated in 3 seconds in that fight. She holds her own with but a pistol and gumption, and Renfield is not torn limb from limb, even though I think literally he was up against, multiple people that were at that point familiars. So when the powers are extremely powerful and bug-based, I guess eating a bunch at once would make you stronger, but also then the other guys should have just eaten a bunch of bugs, but eating bugs is gross, so maybe they were kind of like, well, I'm a new familiar. I'll eat one fly and see how I do after that.
Yeah.
It just felt wrong. It felt wrong and gross, and I didn't like it.
They also had Renfield doing like some like hand-to-hand martial arts, blood sports combat with other vampires and then eventually Ben Schwartz. And it was like, okay, where the fuck did he learn how to do that? Because, he's doing these things, and I'll take that, he can throw a platter and chop a man's hands off. But like,
by accident.
He's doing these moves, and I'm like, what? Oh, how? And you know,
he trained in the Matrix.
Yeah, it just came down to, writer's convenience. It's just a writer's convenience. Don't think too far past it.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. There needs to be a thing in this movie where it's Renfield training with Dracula, and Dracula's, pushing wood blocks in him, and he's blocking him, or some Batman training montage. But it doesn't make sense. He's just old, so he knows jujitsu.
Well, and hear me out. I know we don't. This podcast is not about taking a movie and fixing it, but we do pitch sometimes hey, what about this? And so what if the first 30 minutes of the movie was when, and they did a really good job of Renfield met Dracula and doing the little backstory. And what if the first 30 minutes was that backstory? And it's how he met Dracula, how Dracula enticed him into being part of his, thrall, then Renfield becoming the thrall, the first couple killings, he's it's morally ambiguous and I can't really do this. But then he closes his heart to it, and he accepts it as just part of his job. And so for decades he's doing that, but then it loses the luster, and then that leads up to where we are today with he's been doing it for so long, and now he's hey, I literally can't keep doing this.
You know what? This you're exactly right. I think the emotional core of this movie, and if there's two things we like about movies, is if it's goofy and silly, or if it has a very good emotional core that hits you in some way where you can feel the emotion going into it. This movie gives you the fact that Renfield had a daughter and wife that he left to serve Dracula. If you show me the scene, what circumstances made him choose Dracula in one moment over his previous family? No, we get a photograph and him going, I once had a family. The emotional core is him having a family, and that the choice is the emotional core, because all of his choices are the emotional bits in this movie that fall flat because they just have no backing to them.
Yeah. And then, okay, so now hear me out. So the first part of the movie is about Dracula enticing Renfield into becoming a thrall. Yeah. And so we get that, and then Renfield's forced to make this decision to leave Dracula. And he does, because he's okay, I want some power. So he leaves Dracula, he leaves his wife and child for Dracula. And then
wait, but there is a cool thing here.
So
yes,
hold on. So then,
I have a cool thing if you have a different thing.
Let's see if we got this. So then he does the first couple killings. He's I don't know if I can do this, Dracula. And Dracula's you don't have a choice. I took your wife and child and made them Draculas too, and I'm gonna hold them under my spell for as long as I want until you are done serving me. And so very much, Nora Freeze-esque, where you have Mr. Freeze who's trying to get his family, back together. You do the same thing with Renfield.
So yes, I'm fully. I actually like your idea slightly more than mine, but I will say mine anyways. Because mine feels emotionally crushing, whereas yours has the emotional hostage element to it, which I think works and could very well draw the tension of this movie, where he goes, he has to kill his daughter or something at the end of the movie, or that's pretty crazy. So mine would be instead, Renfield is I'm serving Dracula. This feels really wrong. I'm having this crisis of faith in Dracula early on, and fuck it, folks. Let's do 30 minutes to 45 minutes of this movie in letterbox grayscale with the film grain.
Yes, that's what I was thinking. Thank you.
Fuck me up with that. The intro sequence of that was so fucking good. And 2 minutes, aka way too short. So Renfield has this crisis of faith. He says, Dracula, I have to leave you. I have a family. They love me. They miss me. I'm going back to them. I can't serve you any longer. This is too taxing on my soul. He goes back to his family. Dracula has killed his family already and is you have no family but me. I am Dracula. He does the fucking Dracula thing where he's fucking evil. And something like that for an emotional core that did not exist.
Okay, yes, and so Dracula has him go out that night and go get 2 people to feed that night.
Yes.
Renfield sees them as completely different people, but then when Dracula feeds on them, the mysterious spell wears off of Renfield, and he has brought the wife and daughter to Dracula.
That's good, because that is kind of like a Dracula, illusion sort of thing you could pull. See, that's fucked up, and I wanted something like that, because all I got was a photograph.
Yeah.
Or a etching of his children, it just was nothing.
Yeah, and to be in therapy and be like, oh, I've been serving Dracula for so long, I'm so tired of it. It's like, yes, but why?
He needed just the one. Yes, it can be entirely taxing to do the same thing that is serving Dracula for your entire life, unending life. But what if Dracula made you do one really fucked up thing, and still you served him because you are his thrall? Like, that's just the thing. It seemed like he was doing it because he got the bug powers and he likes the bug powers, and he'll leave his family for the bug powers.
Yeah. So,
bug powers.
Jimmy, what do you think? Would you recommend this to people? Would you tell people to sit down and take an hour and a half of their life, if they want a spooky movie to watch during Halloween? Is this a good spooky movie to watch? Would you tell people to sit down with their kids and their families and, put on Renfield, get some popcorn, and watch this good old movie?
I think I'd only tell someone to watch this movie if Nick Cage was in the shot of or right behind them. I'd be like, yeah. Yeah, he's wrapping his hand around their head.
He comes up behind you and puts his hands on your shoulders.
Yes. And I'm like, yes, you should. There's pretty much the only instance where I would say watch this movie. This is a not watch for me. Oh boy, did I not like this movie. There were multiple audible. I was yawning. I was trying to listen to the dialogue, but when it wasn't a writer's convenience, it was just inane or Awkwafina yelling a curse word at someone in an attempt to be funny. And I think Awkwafina can be funny. I think she was really good in Shang-Chi, but this one, I'm going to say it's a not watch for me. Aaron, what do you think?
Oh, Nick Cage, hi, how's it going?
Nick, hey.
Yeah, you finally made it. Yeah, watch
hands
this.
on his shoulders.
Watch this. No, don't watch this movie. Oh
no, he was killed by Nick Cage.
No, don't. I don't know. This is one of those movies where it wasn't so much oh, this movie's so bad, don't watch it. Or this movie's so good, bad, do watch it. It was one of those movies that just absolutely did not impact me in any way. And, I'm going to probably be sitting down next Halloween with Jimmy. We're going to be looking for a movie to watch. I'm going to be like, hey, we should watch Renfield. And Jimmy's going to have to remind me that we did watch this movie.
I'll somehow find a way to slap you through my computer.
Yeah. I don't know. So, I saw the original trailer for this, like I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, and I was very hopeful for this movie. I love Ben Schwartz. I love Nick Holt. Nick Cage was a national treasure. So, I wanted to like this movie a lot. And
Nick Cage is a national treasure.
He is a national treasure. None of what they were trying, the comedy didn't hit. The action didn't need to be in the movie. And the horror, I'll give them. The set pieces were hoary, but just
could have put a couple whores in
there. There was just no point at this movie where I was like, this is something that in one way or another somebody else needs to watch. And so therefore, I'm just not going to recommend it to people because, I don't know.
Yeah. If you want a sneak peek at if we ever watch, I think it's called Night Shift or Day Shift, the Jamie Foxx one. It's basically this movie again.
Yeah.
But with Snoop Dogg instead of Nick Cage.
Oh, yeah. Snoop Dogg was in that.
He sure is. He wears a cowboy hat and he's in the movie.
He's a little bit country, yeah.
And he's kind of in the movie and he kind of talks like this and he's got a couple lines and then he's out of the movie.
Yeah. I don't know.
Uh,
I don't feel like I talked enough about the action in this movie where it was just like so pointless to the actual movie
yeah.
where every time they did something and like the movie starts out strong. The movie, I was very hopeful at the beginning of the movie because like they do the fun little black and white bit. And I was
Put
like,
30 minutes of that would have been just
so much
good.
better. Yeah. But like they did it and they did it very well. They have these like set pieces that are Dracula's castle and it looks very good.
It's
And then they,
really good.
yeah. And then they have Nick Cage walking around as Dracula, you know, delivering lines. And it's like, oh, this looks good. And I want more of this. And then you're instantly ripped out of that and put into this movie. And you're like, okay. And
Yeah.
then it starts to just try and develop the movie, which just did not work.
Yeah, well, I feel like it's a point for point, right? Where you're trying to follow the plot, and I wanted it to be funny. I wanted it once they hit the action, right? It's like I understood. They're like, okay, they're doing this. This is what this movie is. I don't like it that this is what it is, but I understand what they're doing, so I'm going to put up with it and see where they go. So he fights the guy, he decapitates him, shoots his head all the way out in front of Ben Schwartz, and Ben Schwartz freaks out and is like funniest part in the movie. I think he's like, "What the fuck? There's a head!" And he like drives and. But the problem that I feel like this movie continued to do stems from just like I can use this scene as the template for why I don't think any of this movie started to work like at all. So Ben Schwartz, it is established he is a drug dealer involved with like Renfield killed his guy, so like he's gonna end up not wanting to hang out with Renfield. You know, he hates Renfield now. But the movie goes, okay, Ben Schwartz is the main character now for this moment because we have to introduce Awkwafina, who like the orbit of characters around Awkwafina fucking suck and are shitty. So we get Ben Schwartz, who then the movie follows him into like a boring sequence where he's like, we're in a shop, we have to cars with we're doing a sort of tete-on-tete, me and my cop and cop, Awkwafina cop and other cop. We're talking. And then Ben Schwartz shows up in that scene because that's where he was driving from. And you're like, okay, folks, first of all, like I understand that like the time you're connecting the characters in the universe here. We're Awkwafina is a main character now for some reason. And it makes more sense later why Awkwafina is the main character because she like is a hero. She's like a fucking Belmont. Like I don't know. She's supposed to be the fucking best bounty hunter in the world apparently because she could try and kill Dracula, but that's not established. It's just sort of like she's good at it. Either way, the movie didn't make me want to follow Ben Schwartz based on the one interaction we had Ben Schwartz. It's like I wanted to. I was like, I'll follow Ben Schwartz to the end of the earth. What's he going up to? And then the movie cuts over to Awkwafina and I go, how do we? And then Ben Schwartz shows up. I go, oh, okay. But I'm like, the movie's called Renfield. Renfield just did a thing that I thought you were trying to make the movie sort of this bug-eating, ass-kicking thing. But then we're switching over to Ben Schwartz, the goof 'em up guy. And then the whiplash between every single sort of character interaction, I just lost my mind.
Yeah. And you know, further, that's another point that we didn't hit on was when Ben Schwartz finally interacts with Dracula and we're like, all right, now we're going to get Ben Schwartz thrall. Yes. All right, this is going to finally be funny. And then they proceed to not give it to us at that exact moment, which was fucking wild. And then like 10 minutes later, they're like, hey, remember how Ben Schwartz was here talking to Dracula? He's still doing that. And now you're going to get a hint that he's going to become a thrall. And then like 30 minutes later, he shows up as the thrall. And you're like, okay, well, maybe now it's going to be funny. And then it was like, no, he doesn't really do anything or serve any purpose to, you know, being Dracula's thrall. He's just here and now he's more cocky. And it was like, then what the fuck, guys?
Oh, you know what? Fucking the worst sin of this movie is they brought Dracula into the den of this crime lord woman in a coffin. They open the coffin. Nick Cage comes out of the coffin and just like stands up like a regular guy.
Yeah.
He doesn't have hands over his chest and rises up out of the coffin.
Yeah. What?
Why? The movie's supposed to be funny. It said comedy first, horror second. What's happening?
Yeah. I don't know, man.
Fumbled. I think you can have a good director. I think you can have good editors. I don't think the directing was anything really. I don't think there were any crazy shots I was looking at. In fact, I think the action decreased in quality. It's like there was one good action thing, right? Set piece in the beginning, and then it turns into like he's really powerful, so all he has to do is like punch him, and he'll fucking make him shit out his anus, all of his body parts, and you're just like, okay, fuck off. So thank you so much for listening to Too Much Popcorn.
Yay!
I should eat some popcorn after this. Oh, I already had too much.
Hey, remember how we said we were going to watch Clue this week, and then Renfield dropped on Amazon Prime, and we're like, hey, let's watch that. We should have watched Clue.
Mistakes were made. We'll get that Clue episode for you, people. We know you want it. We've seen the comment.
Yeah, if you're wondering what's coming in the next couple weeks, here's a Clue. Rocky Horror Picture Show?
The Nancy Drew movie? Hardy Boy? Yeah, so that's the podcast. We watched the movie. Thank you so much for listening. If you have the time to leave a review wherever you're listening, we'd love to see that. We'd love to see your comments, suggesting movies to watch, what you thought of the episode. That's pretty much gonna do it. This was another spooky review. This month we've been boo much popcorn. So thank you so much. We'll see you next time for the next movie review. Goodbye.
Boo.